Okay, welcome to NetApp's own CIO Central. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming a good friend of mine, Mr. Paul Chapman, CIO of Box. As many of you know, Box is a successful cloud technology company homed in the Bay Area that's helping its customers digitally transform. Hello, Paul.
Morning, Bill. Good to be here. Thank you.
Well, Paul, we're glad to have you join us this morning. And and I have been known previously to quaff an ale on occasion when the opportunities presented itself. But today is a bit special here on CIO Central, a stout occasion, we might say. So I see you're prepared to enjoy a toast with me. So with a Guinness, no less. Cheers, my friend, to your continued good health and prosperity in a very rough and tumble 2020.
All right, here to that. Cheers, Bill.
All right, Paul, for the sake of time, let's jump right into the question, shall we? Prior to becoming the CIO of Box, you've had the experience of being the head of information technology for several big tech companies like HP and VMware, to name a couple. As a pure play cloud company, Box is much different from those long-standing technology giants. Box is a nimble trailblazer that was born in the cloud. So tell us a little bit about Box and tell us how your role at Box is different from previous CIO roles you've held.
Sure. Well, it's actually a great question to start with because I often get asked, how was the transition from, say, a large enterprise that was sort of born way in the last century to joining a company that was born in the cloud, growing up digital, sort of very young at heart. And actually, I like to tell people it's not one is right, one is wrong. They're just different. They're just born at different times. And the way that I have to think about technology and my role and my leadership position at the organization is different than sort of how I was thinking about it at HP and how I was thinking about it at VMware. Box is definitely a very forward-thinking and innovative company. Is leading the cloud content management space with close to 100,000 customers, 70% of the Fortune 500, and many of the world's most risk-averse organizations and government agencies as well.
That's fantastic, Paul. Thank you. And Box is a good example of an IT tech company that sells to discerning buyers, IT buyers, no less. A significant portion of your time is spent acting as a technology advocate or ombudsman, so to speak, for Box. You're clearly not your grandfather's CIO in this role. So tell our viewers a little bit about a day in the life of your job.
Yeah, well, it's actually, I think when you say not your grandfather's CIO, it's sort of, you could think of it as we're always having to evolve in our roles as CIOs anyway. I think if we didn't learn to reinvent ourselves and learn to change at a rapid pace, then we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. And, at Box, our customers are often technology leaders in other organizations. So I get to bring the perspective of the customer into those conversations. I get to take an outside-in view, and I have permission to reach out and connect with other peers and have those conversations. And I think it's not just about being a sort of just an advocate for Box. It's also being a customer advocate and a security champion for our customers, understanding the complexities and the challenges that they're working through in their roles, which there's a professional chemistry there because I can appreciate that understanding. To your point about sort of, Box being a born in the cloud company, that does afford me the sort of what you would call a significantly reduced operational footprint to directly manage, which is often consumes a significant amount of your time in when you have a large on-premise environment. So therefore, that give back of time with that reduced operational sort of set of responsibilities, direct responsibilities, is a give back of time with which then I can go spend with customers and learning how we can best support them.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about here is a real comprehensive engagement and understanding of the business. And I've always respected your view, Paul, of business model first and technology second. So tell us how you stay focused on the business model and then sort of wrap technology around that business model versus the other way around.
Yeah, well, I think I would perhaps extend business model to culture as well. I think that organizations culturally think differently, behave differently, operate differently. And I think you have to understand what your differentiating value is as a company that you bring to the market. And to me, it's all about speed to differentiating value, and where you spend your time should be as much as possible on that differentiating value. And therefore, we take an approach of where we leverage best of breed capabilities. We're fortunate today that we have a massive ecosystem of innovation that's surrounding us. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, but how we bring together that innovation and through our architecture, bring that innovation into our organizations, and build where we can differentiate and leverage where we don't.
Makes a lot of sense. With Box as a cloud-based company, how does that influence your relationship with IT suppliers? So do you demand a specific set of competencies to remain agile?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think about, to start with, sort of guiding principles for, it's not just where we are, but where we're going, and sort of where we don't know we're going. There's the ability to pivot, agility, speed and agility are absolutely critical today to the way that we operate, and it's often our technology environment that allows us to do that. I would say traditionally, when you sort of invested in software and infrastructure that you then bought onto on-premise and then managed yourself, the technology got old. It got stale. You were versions behind. You need, every now and then, every few years, you have to stop and do these big catch-ups and so on. And in this model of constant innovation that's pulled through into your environment, the technology and capabilities are now outpacing and outstripping the ability for the business to keep up. So our challenge now is much more, back to your earlier point, sort of culture and operating model, because the technology is now out in front of the ability for the organizations to keep up. And now it becomes change management, and how much change can the business absorb. And I think that's something that's really important from a technology standpoint, that we as CIOs need to be in a position of where we provide the right technology landscape for the speed of our business. We are in front of the business. We're not behind the business. And that allows us to be agile, bring in innovation and speed, which I think is extremely important today.
Well, Paul, you and I have talked before, and your business was sort of born in the cloud, if you think about it, the very essence of Box and what it stands for. But you still had to assemble what I like to call a digital business platform to drive your cloud ventures and grow your customer base and manage that customer journey. At NetApp, being a 30-year-old company trying to pivot, we found that a lot easier to say than actually do. Tell us how you started and how your journey's going.
What I think is different today is the ability to, it's the interoperability that you have across the services you bring into your organization. First off, you have to make sure that every service meets the right level of security and risk posture, compliance posture that you have. But on top of that, you have an environment that is very interoperable. And in doing so, it allows you to introduce what I would say incrementally, and turn on things that actually start to digitize and automate your environment. And I think that is what is very different than in the past, where it was kind of an event. And that's where failure, the price of failure, was so high. In this new model, you can fail fast. Because you can experiment, you can do proof of concept, you can run things in parallel to one another. And so I think that's really the thing that changes the way that we think about our sort of business model today, is that it allows us to introduce things in a more gradual and incremental way. When I say gradual, I mean small and incremental, but at a fast pace.
Yeah, Paul, we built out a platform, a cloud platform we call Cloud One at NetApp, and it's very much evolutionary. So I think I know the answer to this, but do you ever feel finished? Do you ever get to done in this kind of environment, or is it continuously evolving?
No, it's continuously evolving. I think that's why it's, today, one of the hot topics is in and around machine learning because it's constantly learning. And sometimes, we've turned on sort of ML capabilities and the initial results are pretty basic. It's like, well, I could have done that myself. But over time, what you find is that the ability to ingest just massive amounts of data, look for signals in the data, look for actionable insights in the data. First off, human beings just don't have the capacity to do that anyway, and certainly not at the speed that we can using compute. But what we're finding is that the machine learning algorithms, it's like the more they ingest, the more they learn, the more they learn, the more they ingest. And so it is continuous. And I don't think it will ever be done. I think that we're reaching a maturity in certain areas. It's like, I don't know, Google Image is an example. I can pretty much send any image over to Google Image right now, and it'll give me, more information about that picture than I can even see myself in the picture, right? But there are some that are more nascent. We've been experimenting with some recent what we call sort of digital labor types of machine learning services, and some of them are relatively what I would call sort of basic. But the promise of where they're going is very high. And so we have to keep working it, and it has to be forever evolving. So that's a long-winded way of saying, nope, I don't think we're ever going to be done.
Good stuff, Paul. Hey, let me ask you one last question here before we break. You're a CIO of a successful cloud business selling cloud solutions, but you're also a cloud buyer as a CIO that has to run the operation, right? So you have this very interesting duality. What lessons can you share with us at NetApp about better serving cloud buyers and cloud customers, and particularly cloud executives? What can companies like ours do better to become a trusted industry supplier?
Yeah, well, I think the model today is it needs to be a win-win model. It felt previous models where we sell you something and then we come back when there's a renewal or an upgrade of some sort, and you don't hear from us because you're running this thing on prem or whatever it might be. Today, it's much more about building a relationship, a partnership, understanding maybe some of the constraints I'm working with, the complexities, the challenges that I have, priorities even, right? Different organizations are in different places when it comes to, whether it's budget constraints or growth challenges or whatever it might be. And I think what I find is that it needs to be a mutually beneficial set of outcomes, and that means working together, and that means helping me to maybe transition, maybe helping me to lift, shift, and replace from maybe the old way of doing things to the new way of things. Educate me, help me. I should leave every conversation having learned something new. I'm a big believer in the wisdom of our community and our technology community, and feedback is a gift, and we share together, we collaborate together, we share perspectives, and we learn together, and that leads to mutually beneficial outcomes. And as long as there's value, CIOs don't mind paying for value. The good news about the cloud model is that generally, because there's so much innovation that's happening there on a constant basis, now it's about educating me on how I can extract more value out of your service. That's a benefit to me, and it's a benefit to you because it makes us more sticky in the long run.
Superb finishing comments, Paul. Really appreciate those. And as we talk through this, and I think of the new cloud era, and I think of our engagement and work from home, it reminds me of the old Yogi Berra quote, "The future ain't what it used to be." And it certainly feels that way this year. Hey, Paul, thank you very much. We're so glad you could join us today on CIO Central. It's really great to see you again. Next time, let's do it, though, in the real pub. So with that, let me just give you best wishes for a far less combative 2020 second half. Cheers.
You bet. Cheers, Bill.